There is a building in Arkansas the size of 30 football fields, and at any given moment, most of it is empty. Not because business is bad, because empty is the entire point. That emptiness is worth billions a year, and it's why a company selling you a $4 rotisserie chicken can quietly destroy anyone who tries to sell one for the same price. Here's what everyone gets wrong about Walmart. You look at one and you see the least sophisticated business on earth. A concrete box in a parking lot. It looks like brute force. Build big, buy cheap, stack it high. And that's comforting, because brute force is something anyone with money could copy. But that's not what you're looking at. You're looking at the front counter of a logistics company. Walmart moves around $680 billion of stuff a year, more revenue than any company on the planet, through 10,000 stores using 2 million employees. That isn't a store chain. That's a small nation whose entire job is to push objects across a continent slightly cheaper than it did yesterday. And the numbers that matter aren't the big ones. They're the small ones. Fractions of a cent per item. Because when you move 100 million items a week, a fraction of a cent stops being a rounding error and becomes a weapon. So the question was never how Walmart got big. Lots of retailers got big. It's why nobody can get underneath it. To answer that, follow a single box of shampoo. At a normal retailer, that box lives a boring, expensive life. It leaves the factory, arrives at a warehouse, and then it sits. It sits for weeks. And while it sits, it costs money. For the space it occupies, for the people who stacked it, for the cash frozen inside it. The warehouse isn't storing your product. It's charging rent on your own uncertainty. Walmart looked at that and asked a question that sounds stupid right up until it doesn't. What if the box never sits down? That's cross-docking. Picture that Arkansas building again. A mile of loading doors. Supplier trucks reversing into one side, Walmart's own trucks waiting on the other. A box of shampoo comes off an inbound trailer, crosses the floor on a conveyor and goes straight onto an outbound truck bound for one store. Not into a rack, not into inventory. Across the floor and out the door, often in under a day. The building isn't a warehouse, it's a road with a roof on it, and the emptiness is the product. No storage means no storage real estate, no storage labor, no cash sleeping inside a pallet of shampoo, no markdowns on shampoo nobody wanted. Walmart pushed most of its goods through this system while the industry was still storing things the old way, and landed them on shelves for a couple of percent less than everybody else. A couple of percent sounds like nothing. In retail, a couple of percent is the entire game. Most of Walmart's rivals don't earn that much profit on a whole dollar of sales, which means Walmart can set a price that's comfortable for Walmart and fatal for the store across the road. But cross-docking has a price of admission, and this is the part people skip. Boxes only refuse to sit down if you know exactly what's coming and where it's going before it arrives, which means the timing has to be perfect, which means the information has to be perfect. So Walmart built a system called Retail Link and did something that looked insane. It handed it to its own suppliers. Live sales data, store by store, hour by hour. A shampoo company could log in and watch its bottles leave shelves in Ohio in near real time. That looks like generosity. It is not. Walmart had moved the job of predicting demand onto the supplier, removed every excuse for getting it wrong, and made itself the only player who could see all of it at once. The road with a roof needs a nervous system. Walmart owns it. Now the second half of the machine, because efficiency alone doesn't make a fortress. Efficiency just makes you cheap. Scale makes you dangerous. When you are the largest customer an entire industry has, when you can be 20, 40, sometimes over half of everything a manufacturer sells in a year, the relationship quietly inverts. There's a word for this. Monopoly is one seller with all the power. Monopsony is one buyer. And in a monopsony, price stops being a negotiation and starts being a number you are handed. Walmart's buyers famously don't perform. No wood paneling, no view. Plain rooms in Bentonville, Arkansas, and a chair that makes your back hurt. Across the table, a supplier explaining why their price can't come down again this year. And often what Walmart wants isn't even a discount, it's a redesign. Ship it in a different box so more fit on a pallet. Concentrate the detergent so the truck carries soap instead of water. Change the cap, change the label, change the factory. Enormous companies rebuilt their own operations, not to serve their own customers, but to fit through Walmart's doors. And then there's the pickle. In the late 90s, Walmart wanted Vlasic pickles in a gallon jar for $2.97. It sold spectacularly. Hundreds of thousands of jars a week. It also taught America to buy a year of pickles at almost no margin, instead of a normal jar at a healthy one. Vlasic's most famous product was quietly eating the company alive. And when they asked to raise the price, the answer was, roughly, sure. And we'll take everything else of yours off the shelf, too. That is the fortress, not the walls, the doors. So, perfect logistics, absolute pricing power, 90% of America within a 10-mile drive. That should be the end of the story. Except a fortress only protects you from the direction it's facing. Every wall Walmart built assumed the same war, that the winner is whoever moves a box onto a shelf for the least money. And then a bookshop in Seattle turned up and declined to fight about shelves. Amazon's question wasn't how cheaply can you stock a store. It was, why is there a store? And against that question, the greatest store supply machine ever built is a very expensive answer to a problem nobody asked. There's a second crack, and it's stranger. A monopsony can only squeeze what it needs alive. Push a supplier's margin to nothing, and they don't just suffer. They stop investing, they stop inventing, or they stop. When plastic prices spiked in the 90s, Rubbermaid needed to raise its price. Walmart said no. Rubbermaid insisted. Walmart cut its shelf space, and within a few years, the company that invented half the things in your kitchen no longer existed on its own. But a supply chain of hollowed-out companies is not a strong supply chain. The machine that makes Walmart unbeatable also makes it rigid. Magnificent at doing this year's thing cheaper, and structurally terrible at doing a different thing at all. Which brings us to the part that's still happening. Walmart's answer to Amazon was not to out-Amazon Amazon. It was to look at thousands of concrete boxes it already owned and realize they'd been filed under the wrong word. They were never stores. They were warehouses that customers were allowed to walk into. Within 10 miles of almost everybody, already restocked every night by the best supply chain on the planet. So the fortress rotated. Each store became a fulfillment center. Pick the order off the same shelf you'd have walked to yourself. Hand it to a driver, deliver it in hours. Walmart didn't build a new Moat. It aimed the old one at a different door. The network Amazon spent 25 years building, Walmart already had, in concrete in every town in America. And underneath all of it sits one loop, and it's almost violently simple. Cut a cost, then don't keep it. Hand it straight to the customer as a lower price. Lower prices bring more volume. More volume buys more scale, more leverage, more efficiency, which cuts another cost. It's a machine that converts its own profit into a weapon, deliberately forever. So go back to that empty building. That's what the emptiness bought. Not storage, a wall your competitor cannot see, cannot price, and cannot climb. The fortress was never made of walls. It was made of one decision, repeated 100 million times a week. Make the next box cost slightly less than it did yesterday. This video is sponsored by Moat. Everything we just covered on structural cost advantage, scale that compounds, quality at a fair price, is simple in theory. Actually finding those companies, that's the hard part. That's exactly what Moat is built for. It rates thousands of stocks on the two things that matter most: how strong the moat is and how much you'd pay for it. Quality times valuation on one simple scorecard, so you can spot the widening moats that are actually trading at a fair price. Check out Moat at the link below and go find your next compounder.